So we're breaking down caching in this video. This is a super important topic, right? You've probably used caching before. Cache is something you use to make your software super fast, right? Well, this video, it goes beyond. It'll help you really grasp the concepts around caching so that you can build scalable systems like a boss. Now, caching is all about how to store frequently accessed data in a faster storage layer so you don't have to read it from the database every single time. Now, why would you do that? See, when a software system scales and it has lots of users and lots of data, it becomes expensive to read from the database all the time. Now, this is a confusing word, expensive. What does expensive really mean? Is it related to money? No, it actually means time. That means it's going to be slow for all the users to read data primarily from the database every single time. So cache is basically a temporary storage layer that sits between your application and your database. And if you remember, we learned about databases, APIs, and how clients make requests to servers. So we're going to use all of that knowledge to understand caching. So before we continue, with the help of this diagram, let's understand what caching actually means at a fundamental level. In computing, we have something called as a storage hierarchy. At the bottom, you have disk storage like hard drives or SSDs. This is where databases typically store data. It's slow, but it's persistent and cheap. Just above that, you have memory or RAM. This is much faster, microseconds instead of milliseconds, but it's more expensive and it's volatile, meaning if the server restarts, the data is gone. So to understand it from a fundamental level, caching is the idea of copying frequently accessed data from the slow layer, which is the database on disk, into the fast layer, which is memory. Now, there's one big confusion that people usually have that you don't want to carry is that cache is not a new database. It's just a copy of data that already exists in your database, stored temporarily in memory to just make reads faster. Now, with the help of this diagram, let's look at how this works in a real system. Let's say you have an e-commerce website and thousands of users are viewing the same product page. Now, if we go without caching, which is what you see on the left, every single of those requests will go to the database. The database has to read from disk, parse the query, retrieve the product details, and send it back. If you have 10,000 requests per second, that's 10,000 database reads per second, all for the same exact data. And if we go with caching, which is what you see on the right, the first request goes to the database, retrieves the product details. Let's call it Redis cache, which is a very commonly used cache. Now, the next 9,999 requests check the cache first. The cache has the data in memory, so it returns it in microseconds. The database is only hit once. So the important part here to understand is that caching reduces repeated work by serving the same data from memory instead of hitting the database every single time for that information. So that you don't confuse cache with the database, let's understand what makes the cache different from a database. Firstly, a cache is fast. It stores data in memory or RAM, so read operations happen in microseconds instead of milliseconds. Second, a cache is temporary. Data in a cache has a limited lifespan, and after a certain time, controlled by TTL, which is time to live, which we'll talk about in a minute, the data expires and gets deleted. Third, a cache is actually smaller than your database. You can't store everything in memory because memory is expensive, so you only cache the data that's accessed most frequently. And this is why caches use eviction policies like LRU, or least recently used, to automatically delete old or unused data when the cache is full. We'll cover eviction policies in a future video. What you need to understand is a cache is designed to be fast and small, which means you have to be selective about what you cache. Now, with the help of this diagram, let's understand how and why all of this matters. The performance difference between reading from disk and reading from memory is massive. A typical database read from disk might take 5 to 10 milliseconds. On the other hand, a typical cache read from memory might take 0.1 to 1 millisecond or even microseconds. So if you can cache even 80% of your reads, you can reduce your database load by 80% and make your application 10x faster for those cached requests. And this is why caching is one of the first optimizations that you add when you need to scale a system. Now, don't worry if all of this is completely new to you. What you need to take away from all this up until now is caching is about trading memory for speed. And the speed improvement is actually usually very dramatic. Now, creating these diagrams to help explain all of these concepts, it takes a lot of time. So I hope you appreciate that and you don't forget to like and subscribe. All right, so now when a request comes in, the server needs to decide, is the data present in the cache or not? And this creates two possible paths, as you can see in the diagram. The path one is a cache hit. The server checks the cache using a key like product ID 12345. And if the data exists in the cache, that's called as a cache hit. The server retrieves the data from memory and returns it to the client immediately. And this is the fast path. The second path is the path of the cache miss. If the data does not exist in the cache, that's called as a cache miss. Now the server has to go to the database, execute the query, retrieve the data, and return it to the client. But here's the important part. After retrieving the data, the server usually stores it in the cache so that the next request can be a cache hit. The important part to remember here is that cache hits are fast, cache misses are slower, but they populate the cache for future requests. That means that every time you get a cache miss, that means the data was not in the cache. It's not a problem because it will populate the cache for future requests, which will now be cache hits, which is what you want. Now, from a high level, you can actually group cached data into a few common buckets. The first bucket, as you can see on the diagram, is called as the read-heavy data. And this data does not change often. And this includes things like user profiles, product details, and public content. Basically anything where many users are reading the same thing over and over, and the data does not change every single second. The second bucket, as you can see, is the session-related data. For example, when a user logs in, the server creates a session and stores something like session ID and user ID along with an expiration timestamp. So every request doesn't have to hit the database just to check who is this user. And again, if you're new to engineering and sessions are something that's new to you, what you need to know is sessions check happen on almost every request. So caching session lookups can remove a huge amount of repeated database work. And the third bucket is computed or aggregated data. Sometimes you have data that's expensive to compute, like a user's feed ranking or a dashboard showing total sales for the month. Instead of recalculating this on every request, you compute it once, cache the result, and serve it from the cache until it needs to be refreshed. So the pattern is that if the data is read frequently and doesn't change constantly, it's a good candidate for caching. Now, since we're doing system design, we'll talk about trade-offs. Now, caches are fast, but cached data can become stale. Let's say you cache a product price, but then the price gets updated in the database. If the cache still has the old price, the users will see incorrect data. So the simplest control mechanism for this is TTL, or time to live. When you store something in cache, you specify a TTL, like 30 seconds for data that changes frequently. And it could be 5 minutes for moderately dynamic data, and it could be 1 hour for relatively static data. And after that TTL expires, the cache automatically deletes the item. The next request becomes a cache miss, goes to the database, retrieves the fresh data, and stores it in the cache again with a new TTL. So what you need to take away from here is that TTL is the simplest way to balance performance with freshness. Now, if you set the TTL time too high, your data might be stale for a long time. If you set it too low, you lose the performance benefit because you're constantly refreshing and hitting the database anyway. So the TTL you choose depends on how fast your data changes and how much staleness your application can actually tolerate. Now let's understand read policies, or the strategies for how and when data gets loaded into the cache. The most common read policy is cache aside, or also called as lazy loading. And now let's go through a few steps that help us understand how cache aside works. Step 1, the client sends a request to the server, let's say to get product details for product ID 12345. And in step 2, the server checks the cache first using the key product ID 12345. In step 3, if it's cache hit, the server returns the data immediately from the cache. And in step 4, if it's a cache miss, the server queries the database, retrieves the product details, stores them in the cache with a TTL, let's say about 5 minutes, and then returns the data to the client. So the important part here to understand is that the cache is only populated on demand when data is actually requested. And this is the most common pattern because it's simple and it only caches what's actually being used. You don't waste memory caching data that nobody requests. Now there's another pattern called read-through. In read-through, the cache sits in front of the database and the application only talks to the cache. If there's a cache miss, the cache itself is responsible for fetching the data from the database and not the application. So the difference is in cache aside, your application code handles the logic. In read-through, the cache handles it automatically. What you need to know here is cache aside is more common because it gives you more control, but read-through can simplify your application code. Now, before we continue, I want to take a few seconds break and go a bit off topic and tell you about the Algoroq cohort. Now, this is a live cohort that I run personally with usually 10 to 15 engineers in a cohort. And this solves a very obvious problem, and that is that there are no cohorts for senior engineers that already understand system design, and they want to take their skills to the next level for the post-AI world. So this is for people who already have more than 5 and 7 or even 10 years of engineering experience and want to build next generation production software in the post-AI world. And this is 12 weeks, and we cover topics like advanced system design, AI native system design, architecture for the post-AI world, and tips and tricks to using AI coding tools, but from a senior engineering perspective. Now, I'm planning the next cohort, which is actually my third cohort, around mid or end of May 2026. And this is why I want you to go through the algoroq.io website. And I want you to check out all these topics that we're going to cover in this cohort. I want you to fill up the form on this website if you're interested. And I'll check to see if you're a great fit, and then we'll set up a call with you. And just for transparency, it's $2,500 for the entire cohort. And I teach the cohort personally in this live cohort with the community access. But if you wanted pre-recorded videos, it's $800. Now, the live cohort is a seriously great experience. And once you fill the form, you can also talk to any of the people who have attended the cohort previously. And then you can decide if you want to go ahead and join the cohort. Okay, now back to the video, and let's talk about write policies in cache, or what happens when data is updated in the cache. And this is where things get tricky, because now you have 2 copies of the data, one in the cache and one in the database, and they need to stay consistent. The most common write policy is called write around, and it's also called cache invalidation. And now let's go through 4 steps to understand how write around works. In step 1, the client sends a write request, let's say to update a product price. In step 2, the server writes the new price directly to the database. In step 3, as you can see on the diagram, the server deletes the cached item from the cache. This is called as the invalidation. And step 4 is that the next read request will be a cache miss, which will fetch the updated data from the database and will repopulate the cache. So the important part here to understand is you don't update the cache during a write, you delete it and let the next read refresh it. Now this is simple and safe because you avoid the risk of the cache and the database getting out of sync. Now there's another pattern called the write through pattern, which is the second pattern you can see on the diagram. In write through, when you write data, you write to both the database and the cache at the same time. In step 1, the client actually sends a write request. In step 2, the server writes to the database. In step 3, the server also updates the cache with the new value. This keeps the cache up to date immediately, but it adds latency to writes because now you're doing 2 operations instead of 1. So what you need to remember here is write through keeps the cache fresh, but it's slower. Write around is faster for writes, but the cache might be stale until the next read. There's also something called as write back, which is the third thing that you see here, which is also called write behind. In write back, you write to the cache first and then asynchronously write to the database later. And this makes the writes extremely fast, but it's risky because if the cache crashes before the data is written to the database, you lose the data. So write back is usually used only in special cases where write performance is critical and you can tolerate some risk. So what you need to remember here is most systems use write around or write through because they're simpler and safer. Now, does this mean that caching is always a good idea? Well, caching is usually a good idea when the data is read heavy. That means much more reads than writes. And also when there are many users requesting the same data, which means high repetition. And it's also a great idea when database reads are expensive. That means for complex queries or high latency. But caching is not very helpful when the data changes constantly, like stock prices updating every second, or when access patterns are highly random. Every user requests unique data, so there's no repetition. And caching is also not a great idea when the dataset is too large because you can't fit enough of it in memory to get a good hit rate. And caching can also be a problem when writes are frequent because you're constantly invalidating the cache, so you're not getting many hits. So what you need to remember is caching works when there's repetition. If every user is requesting different unique data, you'll have mostly cache misses and the cache won't help much. You might even add latency because you're checking the cache and then going to the database anyway. So before adding a cache, ask yourself, is this data accessed repeatedly by many users? And does the data change slowly enough that caching makes sense? Now, I hope you know that this video is actually part of a long ongoing system design series on my channel. And I think I've made like more than 40 videos by now, and I'll keep making videos in this series. Make sure you check out the entire series because then you'll understand all the concepts related to system design. And by now, you've understood caching quite well. And in this video, we learned what a cache actually is, a fast temporary storage layer in memory. And we also learned the storage hierarchy, disk versus RAM, and why that speed difference matters. We learned about cache hits and cache misses, what kinds of data we typically cache, and how TTL controls freshness. We learned about read policies, cache aside and read through, and how data gets loaded into the cache. We also learned about write policies, write around, write through, and write back, and how to keep the cache and database in sync. And we learned when caching is a good idea, when there's high repetition and read heavy traffic, and when it's not. In the next video, we'll see how cache can actually exist in multiple places in our architecture. And I make deep, awesome content like this that's great for breaking down engineering concepts. And with AI slop these days, nobody really takes out the time to make such content anymore. And you obviously know that. So I hope you subscribe to this channel and you appreciate all the effort that goes into these videos. And stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video.